All right, buckle up, everyone, because we're diving headfirst into the wild world of cybersecurity news.
Yeah, things are moving fast out there.
We've been digging through a ton of sources, articles, vulnerability reports.
Even some special reports.
The mission here is simple. We got to extract what you need to know to stay safe online.
And ahead of the curve, right?
Exactly. So we're talking everything from the dark web.
Oh, and those firewalls under attack.
And get this, even AI hunting for bugs. So let's jump right in. Dark web's been making headlines, massive credential leak. We're talking 140 million logins, passwords.
Just floating around out there.
Wow, okay. So for the average person listening.
It's a huge wake-up call.
Yeah.
It's time to check those passwords and, for goodness sake, enable two-factor authentication. Think of it like, an extra lock on your door.
Makes it harder to break in even if they have a key.
Exactly. It's just we got to be proactive about our security.
And it's not just individuals who need to be careful.
Oh, absolutely.
Wexford County, their entire computer system was shut down because of a cyber attack.
Local governments, they're targets too.
Major disruption. Talk about a digital wrench in the works.
Yeah, no kidding.
Speaking of takedowns, the U.S. Department of Justice just sunk a huge cybercrime marketplace. PopeyeTools.
I read about that.
227,000 customers.
Yeah.
$1.7 million in revenue.
Wow.
They were selling stolen data, hacking tools, even like tutorials on how to commit fraud.
Like cybercrime as a service, different tiers, subscription options. Crazy, right?
Organized and sophisticated. It's not just kids in basements anymore.
Definitely not.
And it's not just digital marketplaces, even those illegal streaming services.
Big business.
Two brothers, they were charged for running one that pulled in $7 million.
$7 million.
Yeah, and the losses to the film and TV industry over $100 million.
Wow, okay, that's huge.
So it's not just a harmless movie here and there, right? It's fueling this massive criminal enterprise.
Right, and putting your own data at risk?
Exactly. Speaking of risk, Microsoft just disrupted a phishing-as-a-service platform called ONNX. Millions of phishing emails every month, specifically targeting Microsoft 365 users.
Phishing as a service is a growing trend.
It is.
It's like a toolkit for phishing.
So anyone can launch a campaign, regardless of their technical skills.
Yeah, this ONX operation, it was using Telegram for control. They even had subscriptions.
Subscriptions?
Yeah, so we got to be extra vigilant about phishing threats.
It's like they're handing out phishing starter kits. And another group, Scattered Spider, they stole $11 million in cryptocurrency.
Using phishing attacks.
Yeah, they targeted companies in gaming, telecom, all sorts of industries.
Cryptocurrency is such a prime target, unfortunately. We got to emphasize security training for employees.
They're often the first line of defense, right? All right, we've seen how these cyber criminals are moving. But what about the weak points they're exploiting? Let's shift gears. Talk vulnerabilities. Palo Alto Networks, they're big in the cybersecurity world. Hackers are exploiting 2 zero-day vulnerabilities in their firewalls.
0 day. That's a secret backdoor the company doesn't even know about.
So there's no fix for it?
Not yet. Nope. It's like leaving your front door wide open.
Oh, no.
And in this case, we're talking bypassing authentication, gaining root access, full control of the firewall.
Root access, that's like having the master key, right?
Exactly. And it underscores how vital those security updates are. Even big companies, they can have vulnerabilities.
Patching is key.
Absolutely.
And Citrix, they specialize in remote access solutions. They disclosed 2 vulnerabilities in their session recording component.
And the scary part is, exploits for these are already online.
So it's not just theoretical.
Not at all. We're talking privilege escalation, remote code execution.
Remote code execution.
The attackers can use those flaws to get a foothold, potentially take control.
So what should people who use Citrix do?
Install those latest security updates from Citrix. They've released patches. And always be wary of those unsolicited emails, messages.
Anything asking you to click on links, download attachments.
Yeah, be cautious.
And for those who use AnyDesk for remote access, a critical flaw could be leaking your IP address to attackers.
It's that allow direct connections feature. It can be exploited, revealing public and even private IP addresses.
Yikes.
Disabling unnecessary features using a VPN, those can help.
VPN, it's like an online disguise.
Right.
Hackers are getting sneaky, even on macOS. A race condition vulnerability was discovered in macOS WorkflowKit.
That one's serious.
Serious how?
Malicious apps could run code with root privileges.
Wait, so just downloading an app could give hackers control of my whole Mac?
Potentially. Keep your OS up to date. Apple addressed this in macOS 14.2. And be careful what you download. Stick to the App Store when possible.
Good advice. Now for something mind-blowing, AI has joined the cybersecurity battlefield. Google's AI-powered OSS Fuzz tool uncovered vulnerabilities in open-source projects. One was a 20-year-old bug in OpenSSL.
AI can be a powerful tool for good.
A 20-year-old bug? How is that even possible?
They didn't have these AI bug hunters back then. It's a game changer, especially for open source software. It helps find and fix vulnerabilities much faster.
So it's like an army of digital detectives.
Exactly.
But couldn't AI be used by hackers too?
It's a double-edged sword, you're right.
Mm.
We'll likely see an escalation on both sides. Defenders and attackers both using AI.
Like a whole new arms race. And speaking of arms races, Kubernetes, it's a platform for managing containerized applications. They just announced a critical vulnerability.
Gives attackers root access to virtual machines.
Oh no.
It's all about securing the entire software supply chain.
Mm.
Even platforms like Kubernetes can have flaws.
So it's not just passwords and phishing emails. The software we use has to be secure too.
Absolutely.
That's a lot to digest, I know. But don't worry, we've got more cybersecurity news to cover. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive. We'll be looking at some special reports that paint a bigger picture of the threat landscape.
Can't wait. We've covered some pretty intense stuff, but knowledge is power, right? The more we understand these threats, the better prepared we are.
Yeah, definitely. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to cybersecurity.
Not at all.
And before we move on to those special reports, I wanted to circle back to those exposed industrial control systems.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned 38% are in North America. Where are the rest located?
Well, according to the report, 35% are in Europe and 22% are in Asia. So it's a global issue. Critical infrastructure everywhere is potentially at risk.
And a lot of those systems use protocols like Modbus and BeacNet.
Right.
What exactly are those? Are they inherently insecure?
So those are communication protocols specifically for industrial settings. Think of them like languages machines use to talk to each other. They control things like machinery, monitor sensors, in power plants, water treatment facilities, factories.
Okay, so they're not flawed in themselves. It's more how they're being used now.
Yeah, it's like they weren't designed with security as a top priority because they were used in closed networks. But now, more and more industrial systems are connecting to the internet for remote monitoring and control.
Right, so it's like putting a vintage car on a modern highway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the report points out human-machine interfaces, HMIs, as being particularly vulnerable.
HMIs.
Yeah, those graphical interfaces operators use to, interact with the systems. They often have access to sensitive functions and data.
So like the dashboard of an industrial control system?
Exactly. But they're designed to be user-friendly, so security sometimes takes a back seat. And that makes them prime targets for attackers.
And the report mentioned that the water sector seems particularly at risk. Any idea why that is?
Well, water's essential, right? Disrupting water systems would have a massive impact on public health and safety. So that makes them a high-value target. Plus, many water systems still rely on older technology, haven't really kept up with cybersecurity practices.
So a high-value target with potentially weaker defenses. Not a good combination.
Not at all. It's a recipe for disaster.
And what about the agriculture sector? They make up a big chunk of those exposed systems too.
Right, and agriculture is becoming more and more reliant on technology for irrigation, climate control, livestock management. Attackers could disrupt food production and distribution by targeting these systems.
This all ties back to what we talked about earlier, that cyber attack in Wexford County. If a local government can be crippled, imagine what could happen if critical infrastructure was targeted on a national scale.
It's a scary thought. And we're seeing more and more sophisticated attacks, nation-state actors designed to disrupt essential services and cause economic damage.
This isn't child's play anymore.
No, not at all. We're talking well-funded, highly skilled adversaries.
So what can we do about it? It
Yeah.
feels like we're constantly bombarded with news about data breaches and attacks. It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
I understand that feeling.
Yeah.
But we're not powerless. It starts with awareness, understanding the threats. Then we can take action. Strong security measures, keeping software updated, being vigilant about phishing attempts.
So it's like a neighborhood watch online.
Exactly. We all benefit from a more secure online world. Cybersecurity needs to be a priority.
And speaking of priorities, that MITRE report on the top 25 software weaknesses highlighted some interesting trends.
Yeah, it's...
You mentioned cross-site scripting, XSS was at the top.
Right.
Were there any other big movers on that list?
Oh, absolutely. Cross-site request forgery, or CSRF, climbed quite a few spots, landed in the top 10.
CSRF, what's that exactly?
It tricks users into performing actions on a website they're already logged into, spreading malware, stealing information.
So if I'm logged into my bank account and click a malicious link, a CSRF attack could make unauthorized transactions.
That's the idea. Always be cautious about the links you click, especially from unknown sources. Double-check that URL before entering any sensitive information.
Good advice. What about path traversal? That one jumped up the list too.
Path traversal attacks exploit weaknesses in how a web server handles file requests. Attackers can use special requests to gain access to files they shouldn't see.
So they could get system files, confidential data.
Potentially, yeah. It highlights the importance of secure coding practices.
Right, so developers need to be extra careful.
Absolutely. Think of it like having a security guard checking IDs, making sure everyone who enters is supposed to be there.
And then there are out-of-bounds read vulnerabilities. Those seem to be popping up more and more.
Out-of-bounds read vulnerabilities happen when an application tries to access memory outside of its allocated buffer, like trying to read a page that's not in a book.
Could cause the application to crash.
Or even worse, leak sensitive information.
It seems like a lot of these vulnerabilities come down to human error. Careless coding, falling for phishing scams. Is there anything we can do to address this human element?
Definitely. Education and awareness are key. Equip users with the knowledge and skills to identify and avoid threats. Recognizing phishing emails, understanding strong passwords, knowing how to report suspicious activity. It's about fostering a security-first mindset.
So it's like, see something, say something, but for the digital world...
Exactly. We all have a responsibility to look out for each other and create a culture of security.
So far, we've covered a lot. Cybercriminals, vulnerabilities, AI, it's a lot to take in. But there's one more piece of the puzzle, and that's how we can all work together to create a more secure online world.
That's the key, working together.
We'll be exploring that and more when we return for the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about everyone's role in online security. It's a team effort, right?
Oh, absolutely. We all have a part to play. Cybersecurity, it's like a team sport.
And that brings us back to the MITRE report, those software weaknesses.
Yeah.
We talked about cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, path traversal, out-of-bounds read vulnerabilities. But there was another one that's becoming more and more common, SQL injection.
Ah, yes, SQL injection. Those attacks target databases. They use malicious code to manipulate database queries.
Manipulate how?
Well, they try to access, modify, or even delete sensitive data. It's like sneaking a secret message into a request, hoping the database spills all its secrets.
Okay, so like if I'm on a website with a search bar, I type in some malicious code instead of a regular search term.
Right, and with an SQL injection attack, you could potentially get access to the whole database.
Whole thing.
Yeah, that's why input validation is so important.
Input validation.
It means websites and applications have to filter and sanitize any data that users input. That way they can prevent that malicious code from being executed.
So it's like having a bouncer at the door checking everyone's ID.
Exactly. Making sure no one's bringing in anything they shouldn't.
It seems like a never-ending battle. Developers trying to build secure systems, attackers finding new ways to exploit them. It's a lot to keep up with.
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but that's why we focus on the fundamentals.
The fundamentals.
Strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being cautious about phishing emails, keeping your software updated. Those are the building blocks of good cybersecurity.
It's like building a house, right? You need a solid foundation.
Exactly. No matter how fancy the rest of it is, it won't matter if the foundation's weak.
And those basic security practices, they apply to everyone, right? Not just tech experts.
Absolutely. Everyone who uses the internet needs to be aware of these things.
So it's not just about technical know-how.
It's about good habits, being mindful of security in everything we do online.
And it's not just about protecting ourselves.
It's about protecting each other. If we all take cybersecurity seriously, we make the online world a safer place for everyone.
Well said. That brings us to the end of our cybersecurity news roundup. We covered a lot today: the dark web, AI bug hunters, vulnerabilities, and more.
Yeah, we've been through a lot.
Hopefully you've learned something new. Maybe you're even feeling a little more empowered to protect yourself online.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And here's a final thought to leave you with. We live in a world where convenience is often prioritized over security. Think about how you balance those two in your own life.
It's a tough balance sometimes.
It is. What trade-offs are you willing to make? Where do you draw the line? That's something for you to think about.
Definitely something to consider.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Stay safe out there, everyone.
And stay informed.